The updated edition of Geology of British Columbia takes us on another journey through time. It reminds us that change is the only constant in our world, and it proves this astonishingly diverse, beautiful province is being transformed before our very eyes and before the eyes of nature-loving zoologist Sid Cannings. Cannings currently works in Whitehorse, observing endangered species for Environment Canada, and it is my pleasure to welcome Sid Cannings to Studio 4 to tell us more back from the north.
Nice to be here, Fanny.
Nice to see you again. It's usually your twin brother, that Richard guy.
He's hogging the spotlight all the time.
Yes, he is. So it's time you had your turn.
Yeah, I'm coming out of the north into the city here.
But as a young boy, you were crazy about nature, right?
Yeah, we both grew up in a family, especially my father was curious about everything, and we would go on hikes and we would fish and we would look at birds, and my dad was taking pictures of everything, and he would bring home books on geology. Nobody around the family was a geologist, but he was always trying to find out as much as he could about the land around us, and I kind of picked that bug up from him.
Because the animals and the species are dependent on the land around us, it would seem to me, and
yeah,
we are too.
Yeah, they're not only dependent, but where they live has to do with the history of the land. You know, it's not just an accident that Ponderosa pines live in the Okanagan and the cedars live here.
Not just an accident. There are no accidents, right?
Because it's all history.
I know all history. I noticed you have a real geologist on the cover of this book, Joanne Nelson. So there's Sydney, you, and Richard, him, and Joanne Nelson, the geologist.
Yes.
So two zoologists and a geologist get together, curious about everything. Why is it important we study geology? What can we learn?
Well, I think one of the things you mentioned in the first part was that change is the only constant, and I think sometimes it really helps to remind us about our place in history.
Right.
It's just not always been this way. We always assume that we only live for 50 or 100 years or something like that, and nothing much changes. Although it's changing more rapidly now, of course, and we're helping that along
with climate change.
But people don't realize that a few thousand years ago there were no cedars growing on the coast, and
only a few thousand years ago.
Only a few thousand years ago, and not even back to the Ice Age. They didn't come in right away.
Where did they come from?
From the south, from California.
So that's why geology is relevant. I mean,
really. Well, geology
in
the broad sense, and just a knowledge of that history, of the longer history of the whole world we live in. So this book is about geology, but it's also about how geology interacts with the living things that live here as well.
Of course, because when you see a redwood in a swampy area, and you do in BC, don't you? Don't we have some redwoods?
We don't have. Well, we have fossil redwoods, yes, but we don't have the redwoods.
No, not like in California.
No.
Did we ever? I guess we did if we have fossils.
Well, we had the dawn redwoods, which are a different thing, but they're relatives.
Smaller.
They're just different. I wouldn't want to say they're smaller or bigger, but
how many
they're
years?
Smaller today.
How many millions of years ago?
Well, that was on the order of like 20 to 50 million years ago in the Eocene period. There was,
really?
The world was coming out of that real warm land of the dinosaurs time, but it was still warm, and it was more like the Carolinas here in those days, and so you were having these dawn redwoods live in these big swamps with swamp cypresses in the Okanagan and the Thompson areas, and
so
they're
that's why you
in fossils.
See, and I didn't know until I read some of the geology of British Columbia that there's such a thing as a fossil twiglet.
The twiglets, because the redwood, these dawn redwoods, and redwoods today, not redwoods today, but the dawn redwoods were deciduous. They're like larches. Larches are conifers that lose their needles in the winter. And so these dawn redwoods lost their needles, but they lost the whole twiglet.
Right. So
that's why these
twiglets.
This? Well, in fossils, in the Princeton area, in the South Okanagan area, Kamloops area, you see these, there was a lot of volcanism happening, so there was a lot of volcanic ash being laid down, but it was a warm, swampy time, so these redwoods would lose all their twiglets every winter, and so there's billions of these twiglets in all the sediments there.
That's why you need this book, because you're in the car and the kids say, look at that. And you say, oh dear, that's just some fossil twiglets, and here's why. 45 million years ago.
Yeah.
But you study it, so you know how interesting it is. What about the Marble Canyon? The aerial perspective Marble Canyon, that's on the island, right?
No, Marble Canyon, this Marble Canyon, you're thinking maybe of Marble Meadows, but Marble Canyon is up by, Pavilion and Ashcroft in that area.
In central BC, I've been there. I should recognize
Yeah, this is a shot taken from a helicopter by a friend of mine, but it's looking down on the lake there. And you can see these massive cliffs of limestone, and these came from underwater reefs, on tropical island arcs, kind of like Hawaii, a long time ago, hundreds of millions of years ago. And they actually, when you look at the details there, if you wet the rock and get your little hand lens out, you can see little tiny fossils, and these are shelled amoeba-like creatures called fusulinids, and the kind that live there are found in 2 places in the world. One is there, in this what we call the Cache Creek terrain, and the other place is in China and Japan. And so these fossils formed in what we call now the Tethys Sea, which is the ancient seaway that was sort of bounded by India and Australia and China, and it closed when India smashed into Asia and created the Himalayas. But in the meantime, part of the seafloor had moved relatively across the Pacific, and North America was moving west and bumped into it, and now those rocks that stretch from Cache Creek all the way up to Whitehorse. I look across in my Whitehorse home across to Grey Mountain, which is the northern limit of that Cache Creek terrain, and those fossils tell us that they've come from across the Pacific.
When you look at the lions in our backyard, next to Grouse Mountain, right there.
Yep.
What did they used to be? Were they always there? Were they always snow-capped?
Well, they used to be way underground. You know, they're made of granite or granodiorite or granite-related rocks, and those are rocks that are formed. They're plutonic rocks. They're like volcanic rocks, but instead of coming to the surface and crystallizing, they crystallize way below the surface. And so they are the sort of ancient core, there they are, of the Old Coast Mountains. And the Old Coast Mountains were formed when Vancouver Island and the Charlottes, and that piece, that terrain ran into North America and pushed up the early Coast Mountains, and all the sediments that were pushed up all eroded away, but it's hard to explain this in a few seconds, but the seafloor, of course, was going under the edge of North America, and that melted and heated everything up in a tremendous way, and this went on for a long time, and so the coast of North America was really warmed up deep down, and they formed underneath, deep down, these massive lobes of magma, volcanic magma, that never made it to the top.
So no explosions?
No big volcanic explosions, they just big lobes of molten rock rising up and displacing the rock of the mountain, pushing up the mountains, but staying underground. And then eventually, all that rock above was eroded away just by water and ice, and that sand actually forms the sand of the Nanaimo group of sandstones. All that beautiful sandstone on the Gulf Islands comes from the early Coast Range, and this stuff was still underground, and then more subduction came along later and made.
So are you talking about tectonic plates moving around? Is that what it is?
That's all it is.
That's all it is. It's so simple, isn't it?
So simple.
It's just so
simple. Complicated, but so simple.
Glad we get it. The plates are just sliding around.
Yeah, you and I, non-geologists, can just sort of keep it.
We're just on the bus, and just as long as they don't slide the wrong way, so that we have the big
It's all happening today.
The big earthquake.
San Francisco's slide north, and it'll be sailing by in a few million years, and we can wave as it goes by.
Well, I doubt we'll be here in a few million years, unless science, they're doing some experimenting. Maybe we will be. When you look at something, how do you know it's volcanic or not? Like, is it the type of stone? Like those basalt. Isn't it basalt? Those beautiful columns, the basalt columns.
Well, yeah, I know you're talking to a non-geologist here, so sometimes I have to ask that question.
Glad I asked the question.
But when you see basalt columns, which are those they're just beautiful, angular, usually sort of like hexagonal columns of rock, usually in big cliffs. You see a lot of them at the edge of the Caribou and Chilcotin plateaus.
Oh, so beautiful.
You see a lot in the Okanagan, Similkameen, Kamloops area. You see them on the way to Whistler, at As you get to the top of the hill, when you're getting to Whistler, there's all those big basalt
That's why
columns.
they have a few of those nets there, like holding it up.
And you know, those are rocks. Those are volcanic rocks that have come to the surface and cooled really quickly.
Okay.
And when they cool quickly, they form those joints. You know, the cracks. You know, like it's like mud cracking, and you get those nice patterns in a muddy lake bottom. So that's what basalt is. And
as part of the
when
study,
lava comes to the surface too, you get that nice smooth stuff that you walk on in Hawaii or whatever.
So your work in Whitehorse, is it at all connected to geology or completely connected to geology?
Well, in a way, like we said before, everything's connected to geology, right? Yeah. So I work with rare plants and animals up there, and endangered plants and animals, and in some cases the connection to geology is more obvious than others. If we're looking for some of these rare plants that are found only in certain areas where there's a creek of a certain type that's draining limestone or something, some plants love it with that calcium-rich water that comes off limestone. And so it's sometimes the connection's really obvious, sometimes it isn't. So.
A fundraiser, maybe it's still going on, about you can name a lichen.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, you can name,
get
your own lichen. You know how you can get your own star? I should investigate that.
You should. I think Margaret Atwood has her name on a bug in the same sort of
idea. Probably. Well, wouldn't you like a lichen?
Sure, lichens
Perhaps.
are great.
Why not? What a great piece of work this is, and I'm glad you updated it.
Well, it was great fun doing that.
I bet. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again, Pam.
Geology of British Columbia, Journey Through Time. It's the new edition.
The brand new, expanded revised, all the new ideas.
You, Richard, and Joanne Nelson, who is the official geologist. The other guys are just
the
zoologists. She's the brains. I'll tell her. Thank you.